Two. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Daily Destroyer, the DFS show on the Dynasty Warzone Network. I'm your host, co-host at FF Tyler O. I do that every time with my man, Lou Dog at Lou Dog Sherman. We are here to break down the main slate on DraftKings. We're talking week 14. We're talking DFS. We're going to be talking a lot of cash with a little bit of GPP sprinkled in like we always do. Lou, good to see you. How you doing?
Good. Last week was it ended up being like pretty straightforward for cash. Different injuries popped up in value. We had Minshew at 4K as a quarterback who you're expecting 200 yards, 2 touchdowns out of, which he basically got. And then Sony Michel came up. He had about 25 points as well. So like chalk hit.
Late chalk.
GPP bros weren't as happy. It was higher scoring week. Yeah, it was also late in the week, but things that we somewhat were expecting. I don't know if we expected the Gardner Minshew like we did Sony, but yeah, it was a pretty decent week, I think, and hoping that this week it's a little tougher in a way, but I think there's a lot of spots that we'll be able to attack.
Start a quarterback like we always do. I think for cash at the very least, at this point in time, it's tough to talk me out of Taysom Hill. He had 27 DK points last week, didn't run in a single touchdown, and had 4 picks, right? So 4 picks, no rushing touchdowns, still has 27 DK points, priced at 5,600. I mean, for cash lineups, is there another option than Taysom? Really? Against the Jets.
Well, I mean, one thing we'll talk about is I think salary isn't as tight this week than some other weeks we've had. So like you can pay up a little more at quarterback if you wanted to, but for cash, like what you're getting with Taysom Hill facing the Jets, likelihood of 80 plus rushing yards. Probably like it's hard to really expect him to do less than that. I mean, Kamara's going to be back, but just whenever Taysom's QB, he seems to run the ball a bunch. So Jets are a team you can easily run on, and he showed it last week. Like it doesn't even matter how bad of a passer he is. It's just the fact that he's passing increases the floor because he's going to be out there, and he runs the ball, say 8 to 10 times and passes 25 times even, then he's probably still making good value at 5,600.
And the thing is, he had less than a 50% completion percentage. He had 4 interceptions.
Didn't matter.
A less than 50% completion percentage. Didn't rush in a touchdown. And he had 27 DK points. That's nuts. I mean, that's just the power of the rushing quarterback. So I think that just hammers home our point of Taysom Hill being the cash lock of the week. But, we like to talk a little bit more than just one quarterback, Lou. So moving on from Taysom Hill being the cash lock of the week, give me another quarterback you're excited about playing.
Kind of like if you have the money, going up to someone like Josh Allen or just Herbert, they're probably my 2 favorites up there. Josh Allen is in a matchup that I think is going to be somewhat chalky as far as ownership wise, where they're facing the Bucs and coming off of a game that was I don't know, just like an outlier game against the Patriots, and maybe people will be somewhat off of it, at least going with Allen. Maybe they'll go to the Brady side instead, but I think he's in a pretty good spot on a team that, even in a game where the Patriots didn't want to pass the ball, Josh Allen still had 30 pass attempts. So I expect this to be somewhat of a bounce back for him. And I kind of like that. He's 7,800. It's a little expensive, but he does have that rushing floor as well.
And then to butt in here real quick, and just to remind folks, like Josh Allen and the Bills, they are a pass-first team. They like to pass in neutral game scripts. Their running backs is something to be left to be desired. And I don't think they're a team that's going to necessarily prioritize running the football with their running backs. And that sets itself up well for the Buccaneers who have been a bit of a pass funnel all year long. Like, it hasn't been as bad as it was when the season started, but it's still, when you're playing the Buccaneers, it's tough to run the football. It's a lot easier to throw. The path of least resistance against the Buccaneers is through the pass, and that is what the Bills are trying to do. So just doubling down, adding some information there. I think Josh Allen is a good play if you can get the salary.
Yeah. And that might get owned. So that's where I think playing someone like a Herbert is decent. The nice part with Allen is he has sort of 3 options that you can stack him with. So that means that even if you play him and he's higher owned, then you can change up things like don't play Diggs or something like that. But then Justin Herbert, he's at 7,100, which is back up a little bit, but I mean, he's got such a good floor. This is a great matchup against the Giants. He's the type of guy who throws for basically 300 yards every week and a couple touchdowns. So
He's running, and he's running.
Yeah. He had that one game with 90 rush yards, which I don't think you can expect that, but even a floor of like 2-3 points from rushing seems fair for him now. So you have 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 20 yards. That's like what, 15, 20? That's about
things are good.
30 fantasy points. So it's good for 7,100, and people might be not scared, but we're going to come to it at running backs. Like Eckler is going to be more chalky this week, so maybe people are going to be less likely to play the Herbert stacks, and that's one way to be a little different. With the injury to Keenan Allen, that might make it a little tighter on your decisions on wide receivers, but it seems like Mike Williams is going to play early in the week. The thought was they were both going to be missing. So now I think with Mike Williams back,
yeah, he's been testing negative, so things are trending in the right direction.
Yeah. So you feel a little more comfortable stacking Herbert now. And I guess we'll see if that is what happens. And I kind of like the Herbert stack. And then we were talking about before Russell Wilson you liked a lot this week.
Yeah, and GPPs more so, but yeah, I mean, I think that Russell Wilson, he looked bad in his week 12 return from his mallet finger injury. But then last week, he went 30 for 37, a decent amount of yards, can't remember exact top of my head, 2 touchdowns. He looked better. Like, I watched the game, and, I watched week 12, and it was kind of like, ooh, like, not Russell Wilson is dust, but, like, the dude isn't right. Like, something was off. But then I watched him in week 13, and I was like, all right, this is the Russell Wilson I know. It's like, he's accurate. Things are happening for him. So it's like, so I think like there's, the question that I asked myself, and I'm asking you, Lou, is like, is there a Russell Wilson discount here at 6,600? We know what he's capable of. And we also know about the Houston Texans, not a good team, but they're also, again, path of least resistance is throwing the ball on the Houston Texans. So, I think it does open itself up for, a decent low-owned play in terms of getting Russell Wilson with either a Lockett or a Metcalf.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that's something just to clarify is when I mentioned Herbert and Allen, that's specifically for cash. I think if you're going to pay up, I would go to those 2. Brady's just been getting there every week, but the fact that Allen has the rushing in him, I'd prefer him in a cash setting. But yeah, I think what you're saying is all right with Russell Wilson. Like in tournaments, people are somewhat off Russell Wilson. Like, did he lose it? He's had a few bad weeks in there, but like you said, the last couple of weeks he's looked a little better. We haven't really seen the upside from him, but you're facing the Texans, and you can't get really much of a better matchup. So if there's a week for us to see Russell Wilson get 300 yards, this seems like the spot for him to do it.
And then one other game I think is interesting, wanted to get your thoughts. I personally think that this Washington football team, Dallas Cowboys game could go over. I think last time I looked, it was at 48.5. I bet the over, I believe, at 48. I think both these teams trying to win, like this division is not locked up by any means, by any team. And they're still in it. So I think this one could turn into a bit of a shootout. And Dak Prescott at 6,700 or possibly Taylor Heineke at 55. Both are intriguing. Your thoughts, Lou?
Yeah, the nice part about Heineke is he's right next to Taysom, so you're getting that direct leverage off of him. We somewhat talked about it earlier, but I think I'd rather play Heineke than Cam Newton.
Fair.
I just think he has, if you're playing him, I think you have more options. Like you can stack him with McLaurin, and you're playing them off of Gibson. That's probably going to be pretty chalky. So that's where I kind of like Heineke in that at that price. And then Dak, it seems like usually I feel like if this was week 3 or something, we'd be saying Dak is the cash play.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't want to say that Dak has lost it or anything. Now he has all of his pieces back. Um, it seems like a good spot for him. And if people are going to be off of it, that's just more the reason. Like this is, as far as like fantasy points go, playing against Washington has become one of the best matchups for wide receivers and quarterbacks. So it's like this is a great spot for Dak. So Dak and Russ in that sort of upper 6K range. If people are going to be playing the Josh Allen and Tom Brady's of the world, then maybe you just go in between them and Taysom and pick apart some of these guys in that middle there.
Pool of 3 quarterbacks, Lou.
New Taysom and Taysom, Herbert, and Josh Allen are my 3.
Shifting over to the running back position. I think at the top, just talk about Austin Eckler right now because I feel like, between injuries and buys off the main slate, Austin Eckler is that top dog at 8,300. I'll toss in Kamara there at 79 because he does have the best matchup in the NFL against the Jets' non-existent rush defense. Thoughts on Eckler and Kamara?
For me, I feel like Eckler, he's in such a good spot and has been pretty much doing it every week. Like I feel like we've talked about this a few times where he hasn't had more than 15 carries since week 9, and he's still getting at least 15 to 20 fantasy points. So he's a guy who gets a lot of work in the passing game. And if Keenan Allen, he's out of this game, that just means more likelihood that Eckler's going to have the 5+ catch game that we have been seeing from him. So I really like Eckler, and what he has been doing this year a little more than years past is he's scoring tons of touchdowns. He's got 15 touchdowns on the year.
It's great to see, yeah.
And that is good for the upside for someone at 8,300.
You need that. You need that.
That part of it, where you can't just get like these guys who five catches and 11 carries isn't going to do it if you don't also have the ability to get multiple touchdowns, which we've seen out of Eckler. So I like Eckler because he's got that upside. He had a couple of fumbles last week, which you don't really like that. But if he didn't have the fumbles, he had over 20 fantasy points. So his floor is just pretty massive, and the spot against the Giants is very good. We might end up seeing him having more than 15 carries because maybe they just crushed the Giants here. So I really like Eckler. I think Kamara is in just an amazing spot, and people somewhat forgot about him. People don't want to play him because Taysom's the quarterback. We haven't seen Kamara since week 9, but he's another guy who's generally pretty active in the passing game, has good upside as far as touchdowns. People are going to be less wanting to play him because it's the Taysom narrative, but that gives me more reason to want to play him. If Eckler is going to be mega chalk, then you just in single entry tournaments or something, you switch, you pay 400 less for Kamara, and right there you have, all he has to do is beat out Eckler and you're good. It could be 22 to 18.
I also want to point out though is that Kamara's production has been a bit hamstrung when Taysom Hill's in the game just because of the rushes. But I think if you don't play Taysom, Kamara against the Jets, again, is very much in play. But it's not both together.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think of it, is you don't want to play them. If you're playing Taysom, you're playing him for the rushing. You could, I guess, play them together and just hope that, who
All
knows,
4
Saints
rushing
run the ball
touchdowns go to
25, 30
and it
times.
all
Like,
goes to Taysom and Kamara.
I mean, how many times did the Patriots run the ball against the Jets, right? Like, you could have them run it 40 times. It's
Or
like,
maybe Taysom throws 2 dump off passes to Kamara. I mean, maybe that's the GP play, is just stacking Taysom and Kamara.
yeah, I think you could stack them, but I don't think you necessarily have to.
Yeah. And then
But what you do is you do the Herbert stack.
Mhm.
So you're already fading the Eckler. You do a
Mhm.
Herbert stack with Kamara instead. That could be a good play.
I want to move down the list here just a little bit. Mixon, Mixon and Chubb, I don't have a lot of interest in. Feel free to comment if you want to. But below them is going to be Leonard Fournette at 7,400, who is an absolute smash bell cow at this point, specifically with his work in the pass game. And then Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, Pollard has something going on with his foot where he might not be playing, which I think would open up some pass work for Zeke. I know Zeke hasn't looked the best, but the volume would be there. So thoughts on Leonard Fournette in his bell cow role, where he's been an absolute just like pass catching maven, and then Ezekiel Elliott, where he might have the backfield all to himself.
Yeah, it's interesting on Zeke. I agree with Mixon. It's kind of funny. He only had 1 touchdown last week, and now his price came back down. But I think I'd lean Fournette just because we saw last week the Patriots just ran all over the Bills defense.
Mm-hmm.
And Fournette's so active in the pass game. Like this could be a very high scoring game and easily get a hand. And it just seems like Fournette is a key part of that offense right now. So I like that. And then Zeke, I feel like no one's going to play him. When's the last time? Like his upside just hasn't been there for a while. I get the Pollard idea, but so do you think he's going to have 20 carries? Like he hasn't had 20 carries since week 5. And
without Pollard around, he could get 20 carries.
Yeah. Yeah. He just has the most in the last 6 weeks, the most yards he's had is 51. It's just
not great.
For 7,300. It's tough for me to click him over Fournette just because of what we've seen recently and how they're using them versus like we're expecting, without Pollard. Because at the end of the day, like Pollard, did he really take that much away versus like he was only getting like 7 to 10 touches, right? So I guess it depends. If you think Zeke can get 20 carries, he almost needs to get 20 carries to do it because he just hasn't been as efficient as we've maybe seen from specifically Zeke in the past. So it's just tough because like he's not averaging like 5 yards a carry even, and at 20 carries, like you really need him to hit the 100-yard bonus and like get a touchdown or 2, I think, for him to be worth playing over Fournette.
So and let's move into 2 of my favorite plays. One's going to be Antonio Gibson at 6K. I mean, out of the bye, he has seen in carries, rush attempts, 24, 19, 29, and 38. 28. So 24, 19, 29, and 23. And then he's also, the targets haven't been the best, but the last 2 weeks he has seen 6 and 7 targets respectfully. He's being used as a bell cow right now. I mean, another 20 attempts in this game is definitely in play. I know McKissick was out last week, but even with McKissick in, he still saw some targets. So even if you're getting 3 or 4 targets with 20 to 23 attempts against the Dallas Cowboys at 6K, Antonio Gibson is one of those guys where I'm feeling pretty good about the lock. I've always been a big fan of this guy and to see him this cheap again after last week where he's put up 26 and 22 DK points back-to-back. I'm in. And then Josh Jacobs. We know Kenny Drake, unfortunately, is hurt. He is out. Essentially, when Gruden got fired, we have seen Josh Jacobs more involved in this pass game. I mean, just to go over the last 5 weeks, it's been 4 targets for 4 catches, 5 targets for 5 catches, 7 targets for 5 catches, 4 targets for 2, and 9 targets for 9 last week when Kenny Drake went out. He's being used in the pass game, and that has always been the big concern with Josh Jacobs is there work in the pass game. And with Kenny Drake out and Jalen Richard on the COVID list, he might play, but either way, he was on the COVID list, test positive. There's a world where he does see 15 to 16 to 18 carries and 5 or 6 targets. And it's 6,200 in a game where there's expected to be points scored. I do like Josh Jacobs at 62. So thoughts on Gibson and Jacobs, two of my favorite plays.
Yeah, I think they're both very solid plays. And it's another reason why I don't think I'll end up on Zeke, just because for 1,000 less, you're getting, I don't want to say the same thing, but you're getting similar for Antonio Gibson in that same game. But yeah, it's funny that Josh Jacobs, this is what we wanted Josh Jacobs, and we were told Josh Jacobs was going to be a guy who's able to catch passes out of the backfield as well as be the bell cow back, and match up against the Chiefs. Seems like a good matchup as well for pass catching running backs. Like, it doesn't really get much worse than a couple weeks ago when he only had 9 carries and he still had 5 catches in that game. So like his floor isn't that low as maybe it used to be, when he pretty much had to get you his rushing touchdown, and if he got the 100 yards. Now this year, like, he has a better floor because he's catching 4 or 5 balls in these games, and it's not just like a one-off. He had 9 catches last week, which that, I don't know, was that a career high for him? It might have been, but he's been getting 4, 5, 7, 4. He's getting a lot more targets than he was getting earlier this year and in years past. So I like Josh Jacobs a lot, and I think the problem is people are probably going to play both of those guys,
like me,
and Gibson. So it's not really like you're playing him to play off of Gibson. A lot of people are going to play both. A guy that you talked about earlier was Decon Berkeley, who, if you're going to play
6K against the
them,
Chargers,
it's like Berkeley and Chuba even, like, I don't know. We've seen what Chuba does in a full role. Problem is with Cam Newton, he doesn't really have too much like touchdown equity compared to when he was playing before.
And I also want to point out that he has lost his pass game role to Amir Abdullah.
Yeah, that too.
I'm off of Chuba.
Sell me on Saquon. Sell me on Saquon.
All right, so it's tough to exactly sell you on Saquon, but at the end of the day, what it is he's still getting high value touches on this offense. While there's not a ton of them because it's the Giants' freaking offense and they're trash, he is the goal line back and he's the preferred pass catching back. The attempts, not incredible, but still, that he's getting that Austin Eckler amount of attempts. 11 to 14 or what have you. So, I just look at a guy who's, his snap rate's up in the 70%. Like, that's bell cow status, in my opinion. He is the goal line back. He is the pass catching down back. And they're playing against the Chargers, who have been an absolute run funnel most of the year. I mean, I think if I had to take a peek at it, the Chargers run defense right now is 32nd DVOA, last in the league, and 31st in yards allowed per carry, second worst in the league. I think Jake Fromm's starting. They're in. I can't even keep up with the fucking Giants injuries on their wide receiver positions. I don't know who's playing Lou. I have no idea. But regardless, it's not all of them. So it just leads me to believe that is the ceiling gone? I don't want to say so because I still think Saquon Barkley is quote unquote generational, but is this time? It's tough for me because he can always take one to the house.
The problem is his team though, right?
The problem is the team.
If he has an open field,
sucks.
Yeah, that's the problem.
The problem is the Giants' offense sucks. That's the problem. But he's not. That's the thing is getting 20 or 30. If he dropped a day with 13 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown and 5 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown, no one would be surprised. No one would be like, oh, crazy game from Saquon Barkley. No one would think that. I guess it's just we're getting a very good back, albeit who's been injured in a great matchup. Yes, the offense sucks. That's why he's down at 6K. But I still think Saquon Barkley is that kind of running back where it just takes one play for him to 2x his salary.
Yeah, and I mean, there's plenty of running backs that you can say that with.
And I don't think people are going to play him.
Yeah, I think it comes down to matchup.
Yeah, but I guess
The,
like
the
but
Chargers. That's what I mean. Like it's good. Like the Chargers give up plays like that.
Yeah, I guess like Lou, but the thing is like, it's easy to say it, but like Josh Jacobs ain't busting out a 60-yard touchdown. Fournette ain't gonna do it. Like, I mean, there's just like we're talking about like guys who have that ability. Like, yes, some got it for sure, but I mean, I think Saquon just has it more than some other guys.
But that's where like we talk about upside. Like I know a lot of times we'll talk about cash and floors, but when it comes down to it, like you don't really want to roster someone that doesn't have upside. Because when it comes down to it, like there's going to be upside needed in some of these lineups, and a lot of times there'll be one guy in your lineup gets 35 points, and then that's just a differentiator on the week, and it makes up for these other guys that hit floors. So that's where like someone who gets as much work as Saquon, where his floor is still like 8 to 10 points, but he's not going to come out of this game with like 2 points, So that's where.
I mean, is he a cash play? Like, I wouldn't say he's a bad cash play, but I'm not playing him in cash.
But he's like a secondary layer. Like he's behind Gibson and Jacobs in cash.
Yes. But I think
that makes him better in tournaments.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, because all he has to do is if he breaks off a 60-yard touchdown
and catches 5 balls.
Like, it doesn't even really matter what else he does, because like if he does that, he's already likely doing the same amount as Gibson or Jacobs, right? So it's like that just gets you ahead of those other lineups.
Okay, let's try to wrap up running backs here. I feel like we could talk all day. I think there's just a couple other options that we need to be aware of, or 2 situations I want to talk about. It's a 49er situation. They're hobbled. It looks like Jeff Wilson Jr. is going to play at 4,400, but also Hasty is like the only really healthy running back. Jeff Wilson's been battling with a knee injury a bit. Hasty is the preferred pass catching back against a Bengals team that gives up the most targets or receptions, I can't remember one of the two, to opposing teams. So we got 4,400 Jeff Wilson, who we know is at least the goal line back, and 4K Hasty, who we know at least is the pass catching back. Interest in either one, thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like a lot of people are going to go and play Jeff Wilson. He's 4,400. We've seen him in the past be their lead runner. How many times, though, even especially this year, how many times has a 49ers running back who starts the game and is expected to do well get hurt on the first drive?
And then, it's just tough.
Just play. It's like a leverage within the own game. It's like just play the backup running back for the 49ers, and they'll get you 100 yards a touchdown.
Yeah, so I guess it's like I guess like what this comes down to, and to be a bit concise here, Lewis, I'm not playing Jeff Wilson Jr. at 4,400. I like Hasty. I'm not playing either one, but if I had to pick one, I'd pick Hasty at 4K. And
that's crazy to me, because like, what's Hasty done that really gets you on that? Like, he's the most carries he has in a game is 5.
Yeah.
In every other game, he has 3 or less with less than 5 rushing yards. Like,
it's just he's a pass catching.
Gross.
But I'm not playing either one. I'm not. I guess like would I rather play Hasty? I guess, but I'm not playing.
You're saying the fact that Hasty's there is keeping
me off of Jeff Wilson. Yes.
Because
yes,
we've seen Wilson catch balls as well. So
I guess I'm
someone else there for
I'm concerned about the knee. I'm not doing it. That could bite me in the ass in a couple days here, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I also just wanted to go over this quickly. Javonta Williams, people are absolutely just above the, like Javonta Williams, like look at this dude, like yeah, great, things are gonna be good. But guess what? Melvin Gordon's back. Melvin Gordon's still taking 50% of that work. I don't care what fantasy Twitter has seen from Javonta Williams. Like the dude is good, but guess what? Vic Fangio does not give a fuck. He's playing Melvin Gordon. He's getting 50% of the carries. He's getting half of the pass work. And Javonta Williams, I get it's the Lions, but guess what? I'm not even joking about this right now. I would rather play Melvin Gordon in DFS at 5,400 than Javonta Williams at 5,900, because I think that he's going to get the same amount of work. I think it is a bold, contrarian call. I truly believe in my heart that Javonta Williams is a better running back than Melvin Gordon. There is zero doubt about it. But like, we can't sit here and legislate usage. And Vic Fangio has not given a shit that Javonta Williams is better all year long. Why is he going to care now? You know, it's not like Javonta Williams. Javonta Williams got a full workload last week, and they got fucking spanked. The only reason Javonta Williams did great in fantasy was absolute garbage time. He had garbage time, same amount of fantasy points, but like Javonta Williams started all game and they got their shit kicked in. It's not like Javonta Williams gave him a better shot at winning the game. So it's just like Melvin Gordon's going to come back. I'm not playing either, but Melvin Gordon's going to come back and he's going to get his. And next year it is Javonta Williams to the moon. But I'm sitting out of Javonta Williams in 2021. Rant over Lou. Sorry, I had to go off the rails a bit there.
Yeah, it's fair. I was looking at that other guys in that mid range. There's a lot of split backfields, but who came out last week and is no longer on the injury report?
Who
is? I don't know. It's somewhat bold, but Kareem Hunt is 5,600, and before he got hurt, he was getting like 12 to 15 carries and a few catches, and he's back down to 5,600. Like he was in the 6K range, so now he's like at a price, and people somewhat forget him. If you want just like a random dart in that mid range, like I'd rather play him over Devonta Freeman's been getting there because he just gets a touchdown every week. But
you could talk me into Devonta. If you were standing Devonta Freeman right now, you could do it to me. You could.
So like, I think I'd rather play those two guys than Gordon.
Yep.
But you also have.
I'm not playing.
You know who else you got?
Who?
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't brought him up yet. Your boy Detroit Lions. They have all the injuries right now.
Godwin Igwebuike. Sorry if I'm butchering that, folks. But Godwin Igwebuike and Jamar Jefferson are splitting the backfield. Jamal Williams just a COVID list today. He's not playing. These are, is that Stoneman? I'm pretty sure it's Stoneman.
4K, yeah.
4K Stoneman. We have two Stoneman. Like, there's a good chance that Godwin Igwebuike sees 14 touches at Stoneman.
Is he the one that's going to be?
He's the pass catching back.
So Jamar isn't. Jamar's the.
I think Jamar takes
carries.
Jamar. So last week, with Swift out and Jamal Williams in, Jamal Williams, I believe it was, he ran routes on 21% of dropbacks. That's not good, folks. That is a absolute thumper, 1 to 2 down thumper. But Godwin Igwebuike was around like 60, 70%. Like Godwin Igwebuike, well, I'm just calling him Godwin at this point in time. We're not talking about the Bucks Godwin at this point, just to be clear. But Godwin is the pass catching back. I think Jamar Jefferson, well, he might catch a couple of balls, steps into the more Jamal Williams role as the 1 to 2 down thumper, and they continue to use Godwin as their pass catching back. I think
the Lions. One thing about the Lions,
they're going to establish it.
I was gonna say they trail a lot in games and like step it off to the running backs. So the guy that you're gonna want on the Lions is the one who's catching balls. Like that's why Swift has had his upside this year because it's not
on the ground. Balls. Swift did not make his hay on the ground. It was in the air.
I would say I would rather to go with Godwin over Hasty.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would do that too.
I haven't decided on him versus Wilson.
We've gone absolutely off the rails at this point in time with running backs, Lou. I'm going to ask
4K running backs.
Yeah, I'm going to ask us to wrap up. Give me your pool of 5 running backs this week.
Yeah, Eckler, Fournette, Jacobs, Gibson, and I'll go with Berkeley.
All right. Like the call. Moving to wide receiver, I think the first thing we got to talk about is the Chargers situation. We talked about Herbert as a guy that we do, in fact, like. With Keenan Allen ruled out and Mike Williams, who was on the COVID list, but it was due to close proximity, close contact, but has since tested negative, and he only needs one more test and he'll be active. It seems there's a lot of positivity around Williams being active in this game. So Williams at 6K. Is enough for me to lock Williams in, and it's also enough for me to leave Palmer and Guyton out. Thoughts on this Chargers wide receiver situation where folks are seeing value?
Yeah. I think what happened last week with Godwin, a lot of people are going to look at and say, oh, this guy had 15 catches, he had 17 targets, and this is a matchup. I want to get exposure to this game. And in a way, I feel like some people will forget about Mike Evans, who he was in that game last week. He also had 10 targets. I mean, they just decided to pass the ball a bunch of times. Godwin, per usual, just seems safer in floor perspective.
And now we're talking about Chris Godwin, just to get
Yeah.
everything
Oh,
clear
yeah.
on the
Yeah.
same page.
Chris
We're talking
Godwin.
about Chris Godwin.
So I think he's good. I'm not like itching to pay up at wide receiver. Like the last time Tyreek faced the Raiders, he had 783 and 2, which was one of his better games this year. But I don't know. It's hard trusting the Chiefs, and they're also highly priced now that it's almost not worth the risk. Because last week he had 2 catches for 22 yards, so he's in his crazy ceiling. And then Diggs, I already kind of mentioned, but it's more of a matchup for these like short passes. So I don't know if Diggs has as much upside in this game as some other matchups, and he's the type of guy where like he'll probably still get 8 to 10 targets, but I don't really see him having one of those like explosion spots he had against the Jets where he had 162 yards and touchdown. So I probably won't end up playing Diggs. And then is Debo's still questionable, but I don't know if I'm even gonna go there. But if Diggs were, if Debo were to play in this game, like would he be getting the running back role back?
I think you just brought up something I didn't even consider.
For
is if Debo plays, that he might also get 6 to 7 carries.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, then it's like I don't really want to play any of them. I want to start with CD and Godwin this week. CD's in a great spot. Like I mentioned it before about Washington defense, both sides of that game. Like you have CD and Terry are both in very good spots. And Godwin. So I really like the low 7K range. Don't really love the 8K guys.
So a couple guys we talked about. Let's get to that 6K range. I mean, Hunter Renfrow at 6,100. He seems like a guy that at this point in time is a pretty safe cash play. He's absolutely not going to kill you, especially with Waller continuing to be out. It seems like a pretty safe play. And then in that same 6K range, like we talked about Russell Wilson being better, I do like Lockett at 67. I think a lot more folks are going to go to DK Metcalf at 65, but in cash, Lockett to me has been the better option. So thoughts on Renfrow 61, Lockett 67?
Yeah. I think I usually like playing the cheaper of the two. I think in a cash setting, I like Lockett usually. And then Metcalf in GPP stuff because I think his ceiling with multiple touchdowns, 100 yards plus, like he's generally has that vibe where he could have like 4 or 5 catches and a couple touchdowns and 80 yards pretty easily. But Lockett just seems to have a safer floor as far as cash goes, and he's been getting the work. Like the problem is, I know you said it earlier, like Russell's been playing better, and they generally have the targets just go to those two guys for the most part. But unless Russ is getting the 300 plus yards, like it's limiting their upside. So I think we're both very much on the idea that we could see Seahawks doing well through the air against the Texans. Then I kind of like the idea of potentially double stacking them, but it's hard when you see Russ Wilson throwing for like 250 max right now. Mm-hmm. So that's where I think I don't know if I can do it just yet. And it seems like people are going to be playing Lockett more, so then I'll end up playing DK in tournaments. But in cash, I would play Lockett.
So because of our running back plays, for the most part, we're going somewhat cheap, 6K range. And because of our Taysom Hill range, and we'll get to our tight end later, we'll find ourselves not having to pay down too much at wide receiver. Any other wide receivers that you are eyeing before we go to the pool, as I think wide receiver is a bit more straightforward this week than running back?
Yeah, a couple guys in the mid range. Hunter Renfrow, I think, is fine. Like Mike Williams is very good at 6K. We kind of mentioned it earlier, but without Keenan, Mike Williams has had multiple games this year where he already looked like the alpha. So this is his spot to be the alpha. We know his upside, and for 6K, he has more upside than Hunter Renfrow. But Hunter Renfrow right now just looks like he's going to get 8 catches for 100 yards every week. So he's like a pretty safe play as well. So those two guys are good. And then a little cheaper. I know it's gross, but Russell Gage had 11 catches, 130 yards last week. He had 660 and a touchdown the week before. I mean, if you're looking for guys in that range, like he's okay. They're gonna have to pass, and it's against the Panthers. But then I like in the same vein as him. I'd actually prefer this other guy though, Beasley. So I was saying I don't really love.
It's a deep cut.
Diggs,
That's a deep cut.
But 5K. He hasn't been doing much recently, so people might be kind of off of him. But this matchup lines up well for Beasley.
Of Beasley acting as like a extension of the run game through the pass. It's kind of what I'm thinking here.
Yeah, and the Bucks give up these little short passes over the middle, and that's where Beasley is the best. So they basically Beasley's upside. Beasley has the ability to be very similar as Renfrow for 1,000 cheaper. So I think instead of playing Renfrow, I'd probably play one of these guys in the mid range, like a Metcalf that has higher upside in the sense that he can have 100 yards, multiple touchdowns, which Renfrow doesn't seem to really have that in him. But and then go down from Renfrow to a Beasley, and then the other guy similar. Jamison Crowder, especially if Elijah Moore isn't going to play. Jamison Crowder, we've seen it before, but it's the Jets. But he's another guy that can have 5 catches, 50, 60 yards at 4,700.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, Elijah Moore's health in the air. It's a decent play. Lou, sake of time, pool of 5 wide receivers. If one is missing, touch on them real quick.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Godwin, Lockett, CeeDee Lamb, Beasley, and Crowder.
Love it. Tight end position. It is shitty this week. Everyone's priced up.
Yeah.
What the hell are we going to do? I am taking a bold stance here, folks. And I'm going with Hawkinson doubtful. Brock, the Zebra King, right. From the Lions is my punt play of the week, and who I have been locking into my lineups as it provides me flexibility everywhere else. 25K. He's going to be a starting tight end. Already caught a touchdown recently. There's some rapport there. He's the Zebra King. The dude owns an exotic animals ranch, not like the Tiger King where they're caged. They're free to roam. He is the Zebra King. Brock Wright, 2,500. Your thoughts, Lou?
I mean, Zebra King. How can you fade the Zebra King? His name's Brock. He's the only guy on the slate whose name is Brock. It's last week people played Foster Moreau at 2,700, and it literally did not matter that he only had one catch. He was like 40% owned, and in GPP is sure. Like I wouldn't play Brock Wright in GPPs exactly, but in cash you just throw him in, and then you can literally play like every other guy that we've been high on, and it saves you so much salary. He's basically $5,000 cheaper than Travis Kelce, and like if he gets 4 points and Travis Kelce gets 12 points, then it doesn't matter.
You made the right call.
He's a guy who, if he falls into the end zone once, then you're gonna need him most likely. But if you're gonna go more expensive, or if you're gonna change in that same range, people have been talking about Jared Cook this week when there was injury news on the Chargers. But I mean, it just seems like this is a week that Darnold Parham is going to come out with a touchdown for 2,800. If you want to play someone off of Brock Wright, like either him or O'Shaughnessy, like O'Shaughnessy had 6 targets last week. We like joked about him, but he still has. He's
getting
so
the
many
volume.
targets.
He's getting the volume.
If you're gonna play people off of Brock Wright, I mean, O'Shaughnessy is like the safer one, and Parham might actually get more ownership just because people just love the idea of playing Parham at this point in time, and so I mean O'Shaughnessy might be the play, but I'm actually looking at Gerald Everett, back to that Seattle game where we were saying that targets are pretty condensed. This is the third guy that's getting targets on there.
And
Gerald
if we're
Everett.
talking about Russell Wilson being healthy and we're talking about him looking better, the third option is not a bad play.
So where I might be scared to do Wilson with both Metcalf and Lockett, I think it's more viable to play one of them with Everett. And maybe that's where you do the Lockett one. You think like, oh, Lockett's going to get 8 catches, 100 yards, but not the touchdown. Like Everett gets the touchdown, you know? So I kind of like Lockett for 3,500. Then besides that, it's pretty gross. Like Dawson Knox is in a great spot, but he's 5K and he's
That's
Dawson
too much. Everyone's just priced up for some reason, and it doesn't make any sense.
Dawson Knox needs multiple touchdowns, likely. Like he doesn't have a crazy yardage totals, so like 5K for him. He's just been catching too many touchdowns this year. But like I mean, I don't hate Gronk at 6K, but George Kittle, I think in a different week, I think we'd be smashing George Kittle. But the fact that he's coming off of 42 fantasy points and Debo is potentially going to be back in this game, I don't know if I'm going to end up playing Kittle at all. But I don't know. Do you really see any need to pay for anyone above Everett?
No. I mean, like, thing is, like, I think that like Andrews has been getting the volume at 5,900. Like, it's nice. Like, I mean, the last 5 weeks targets have been 9, 10, 10, 8, 10, but like Lamar just hasn't been connecting. Like, sure, maybe this is the week he connects. Like, I could see the upside. The upside's there because the volume's there and we know the big playability is there. But in cash, I'm just not doing it. It's just not for me. And like Dalton Schultz, like, love the dude. I don't know. It's a little different now with, I mean, things were great without Gallup, and now Gallup's back. The volume is still fine, but not enough to get me excited about playing him. So it's a pure punt at this point in time. So I mean, I'm cool with Everett, but I'm on Zebra King Brock Wright this week. Yeah, just a fun little side note here. If Brock Wright first touchdown is plus 5,000 on DraftKings Sportsbook right now. So you want to go get yourself a little bit of cash, Brock Wright will be catching the first touchdown.
You know that I love
the Detroit
my
Lions.
first touchdown bets. Was that Monday? Yeah, Monday. Zach Moss was so egregiously mispriced. It was like plus 5,000 for him because he was like a late add to being active. And I mean, yes, they scored 1 touchdown in the whole game, but he had the most carries for them.
He had 3 high value targets. I mean, like he had an opportunity, so it was not a bad call.
It definitely wasn't a 9-1 chance at him scoring a touchdown in that game.
So pool of 3 tight ends, Lou.
Brock Wright, Everett, and then I'll go with Andrews.
I love it. Let's shift over real quick, close this out here with the defense. It's kind of what fits. We play this game every single week, what fits. But some of our favorites, I think the Browns versus the Ravens, 2,700 for the Browns. I mean, this was a 10-16 game last week. That one feels pretty good. And then the Seahawks are only 3,100 playing the Texans. Lou, any other thoughts on these defenses?
Yeah, I think those are pretty good. It's the type of thing where I think we're both expecting that Browns-Ravens games to be somewhat low scoring in general. If everyone's going to be on the Browns for 100 more, you can just pick the Ravens, and it's basically the same idea in that game. Maybe one just gets more sacks or a fumble recovery or something. So I kind of like doing that as a little leverage. And then the Lions every week just seem to get 4 to 6 fantasy points, no matter who they play and no matter how bad
Yes,
they
they're
are.
sticking in. They're sticking in.
And they're better than the Jets. They're better than the Jets are playing the Saints. People might say, "Oh, he just threw 4 picks last week," but the Jets just don't. I had early in the year, I kept picking the Jets over the Lions. The Jets would get 1-2
Lou.
points, and the Lions were getting 4 or 5 points. So I've learned my lessons on that. So if I'm gonna go cheap, it's gonna be the Lions. If I'm gonna go mid range, it's probably the Browns or Ravens. The Seahawks are great. They're in a great spot as well. And I don't know. I don't think you have to get too fancy at defense this week. We haven't really talked much. One thing I feel like maybe part of our process should be like in these shows is a game that we didn't really talk about much as far as like good plays in was the Bengals and the 49ers, and as well as the Panthers Falcons. So if we're not expecting them to be like a lot of great plays in there, then maybe those are defenses that we should be considering. Like the Panthers.
The Panthers they haven't been bad on defense all year. I mean, I could see a world where we want to play
the Panthers a lot, and they're facing the Falcons. I just realized they're the same price as the Ravens, so that's where I'm like, well,
maybe we play the Panthers.
Maybe the Panthers are the pivot off of the Browns then. So,
yep. Cool.
I mean, the Falcons are just so dead out there.
We spent a lot of time hammering the running back, so we're a little over our normal time. Lou, final thoughts, week 14, main slate, DraftKings.
I think, not really much. It's relatively easy to fit on salary because I don't think there's not crazy guys that are
with Taysom and Brock Wright. With Taysom and Brock Wright, you can fit a lot.
Yeah, just play Brock Wright till when he gets 0 catches, but it's fine. You just eat the 0. This is gonna be a week where we're gonna get 2 zeros in cash and still be perfectly fine. We're gonna pick the Browns, and it's gonna be the one week that the Browns Ravens game becomes
goes
like
to like 56 points.
Yeah. So just play Brock Wright and print.
All right. And for Lou at Lou Dog Sherman. For me, Tyler at FF Tyler O. That's all we have today, folks. Don't forget, tell somebody you love them. Later.